Hi, Tom.
Hi. Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you so much for doing this interview. I love the movie.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you for
I
having
think
me.
everyone did here as well.
Great.
So Maya, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about why you decided to make this movie. Was it more of an interest in the subject matter of the fight for climate awareness and climate change, or was it really to do a film about the activists themselves?
Yeah, I think it always started as a film about people, about the activists. But to be honest, it all happened very, very quickly. I think we were making a film before we really fully processed we were making a film, if that makes sense. Because we were introduced to the co-founders kind of by chance. We were at a pub with some filmmaker friends, and someone had met the co-founders because she'd made a film on the Occupy movement, and a few people from that group were joining this new group. So she'd gone along to one of these early meetings and thought, oh, they seem quite interesting. And so we'd heard about them, and she said, I'm working full time, but if you guys are interested, I can put you in touch. And we were like, yeah, sounds cool. Went along to the first press conference that you see in the film, met Roger, met Gail, and then a few days later was at a training workshop with the group. The next day they were getting arrested at government department building. Then I met Farhana literally the day after that. And then a week later, I was in the UN conference in Poland with her. It just spiraled very quickly. It was a really amazing energy at the time, and lots of people joining every day. And I think, yeah, we just kind of got caught up in it. And then after a few months, we're like, wow, okay, we're on the inside now, we're filming this. We kind of identified a few key people that we thought we wanted to follow. But yeah, it just grew from there, really. And I think, to be honest, I think we didn't really know what the film was going to look like until we were sort of 2 years into making it. It took time.
I guess people are telling you now, this film is really just like an incredible portrait of what it means to be an activist, and some of the struggles that one goes through in committing themselves to a cause like this. What have you learned in the making of this film about what the activist life is all about?
I think one of the big things we learn is that there's like no one definition of what an activist is, and especially with a group like this that was bringing in so many new people to activism. That was what was exciting about it, is lots of different people around a table. Just clearly you can see Farhana and Roger, they come from very different backgrounds and experiences. And that was really exciting. And I think there are a lot of stereotypes around activists, especially environmental ones. And so we found our own assumptions being challenged about a group like this, which was cool. And we found ourselves constantly pulled in different directions as well. You would 1 minute be understanding that tactic, and then you'd be thinking, oh, hang on, but what about this bigger picture over here? And yeah, there's a vision lacking there. And then you get, you're constantly sort of pulled in different directions. And I still feel now, even though it's like 4 years into this film, I'm still feeling challenged and learning lots. I think that learning process never ends, which probably, I think that's a good thing. I think generally we should be like that. I think it's, it's dangerous when we become too rigid in our thinking. And that's part of why we're in the crisis we're in today, right? We've had a sort of political economic system for a long time that's actually been harming so many people and the planet and animals. It needs to shift. And so I think the more that we learn from each other and we challenge ourselves, the better. And I think that's what a lot of those activists did for us as filmmakers. And that's what we wanted the film to do for our audiences as well, to like really get us thinking and challenging ourselves.
You really seem to have unprecedented access to Extinction Rebellion. Were there any ground rules when you started shooting? It seems like you were just on the inside and able to show their private conversations. It's pretty remarkable.
There was the odd meeting where someone who we didn't really know, because it was growing quite a lot, the movement. So you'd have new faces in meetings from day to day. And sometimes people would say, actually, I want to speak openly about something that I don't want to be recorded. So we would just put the camera down. But on the whole, I think there was always someone that, you know, would vouch for us, and we were sort of trusted. And I think once people realized, okay, then they're definitely not going to be, well, I guess they never really knew, but they trusted that we weren't going to, you know, sell the story to the press or whatever. We weren't trying to leak anything. We were just genuinely interested and wanted to be there capturing as much as we could. People, yeah, they kind of relaxed. And also the main people that we focused on, we very much involved them in our thinking. And when we were doing the edit, you know, we speak to them and we showed them the film before it was publicly released, and we took feedback on board. And, you know, we tried to make it collaborative and make sure that they were comfortable with the stories we were portraying. And they still respected that ultimately it was a film where we had editorial control, but we, you know, they weren't like dictating stuff to us, but it was, we really listened to them, and I think they trusted us a lot. So that made a big difference. I think sometimes with filmmaking, sadly, quite a lot of the time, it can be quite an extractive process. And the people on the ground who do the filming are not necessarily the people in the edit room. And that disconnect is maybe not great for the people whose stories, you know, it is, especially when you're dealing with really personal things, which our film does start to do. You know, there's an element of that in the film. So I think it's important that, yeah, that they're okay with what you're showing.
Is everyone that you interviewed for this film okay with the fact that you saw some of the conflict within the institution and the way it played out in the movie?
Yeah, I think so. The feedback generally from activists who are in Extinction Rebellion has been really positive, because I think they can recognize that it starts really useful conversations. You know, it shows it's celebrating things that go well, but it's also, you know, honestly looking at where the difficult parts are, and that's quite helpful. Actually, I think they can see it as a useful tool, and they want to screen it and, you know, get those conversations going. And I also think there's like recognition that, you know, one of the main stereotypes around activism is that they're people who are so self-righteous, they think they know best, you know, just unbearable people. And I think there's been a recognition that, you know, it's quite good to show some humility, show that they're aware that things can go wrong and it gets a bit messy, and they're kind of just trying their best. I think, you know, you actually come off better for it if you're a bit more honest than if you're just presenting this completely together, you know, kind of arrogant side, which we found didn't really exist that much. You know, that wasn't really the atmosphere.
This process of getting arrested was such a major part of the group, and it's debated in the film, like whether it should be the primary focus or not. It really is an incredible dilemma, because obviously when they do stunts or when they get arrested, that's what gets the attention. And it seems like there were some people within the organization that thought maybe we should, you know, just talk to other groups and do things maybe in another way. But it probably wouldn't get the same attention. So, I mean, after being with the group for so long, do you have any conclusions yourself in terms of what are the best methods for a group that believes as strongly in what they do as, say, this group does?
I think actually everyone that we followed did believe that civil disobedience, breaking the law, could be a really useful tool. I think the disagreements came over like how many times you're doing it, where are you doing it, like more the specifics, and for it to not be the only tool that you're using. So I think that, you know, there were some people that it's very, very focused on disruption and escalating it all the time. And, you know, on the one hand, I can understand that, because once, you know, you've done something a few times, the press maybe get bored of it. And there also becomes this kind of like conscious effort, I think we've certainly seen that in the UK, to malign activists and, you know, and maybe deliberately ignore as well, not to, you know, trying to sort of sideline them. So for example, that protest that happened recently at the National Gallery, with the soup on the Van Gogh painting, that group had been protesting at oil sites for most of this year and had barely any coverage. And the moment it does that, you know, suddenly everyone's talking about the issue. So I do understand why there's that push. But then I think there are others, and I also totally understand this, who are kind of saying, yeah, but that alone is not gonna move us into this new space, and we really need to be linking up with other groups that are trying to change things and being more creative. So not just not creative in a disruptive tactic sense, but like in a, actually having a vision. What are we building towards? What are we trying to create? Thinking about alternatives basically, and doing it together. Because I think increasingly the people who are focused on disruptive tactics, they're kind of almost like the radical flank, and kind of in the, and I think it is needed, but it's not the whole picture. So that's probably the thing that's come across clearly to us, is that you do need lots of people doing lots of different things. Basically, it kind of needs to be a whole ecosystem of tactics, I think, and work. And you don't have to be doing activism in a traditional sense to be, I think, making change. There's also, Fahana feels like everyone should have activists on their CV, just because they're engaging with these issues, whether that's in their workplace, at home, wherever it is, just, doing something that's moving us towards a different world, basically, and not just carrying on with business as usual. So, and I like that approach,
Yeah, one of the most powerful parts of the movie to me was near the end, when you start to tell us about that bill that came about that could really prohibit groups from protesting, could prohibit their speech. I know there was a little line in like the closing credits that said that was overturned, but it seems worldwide right now this is an issue where different groups from all different political spectrums are being told that they can't protest, and they're going to jail. They're having their bank accounts taken from them. It's really going to be a scary time. I was wondering what you learned about this move by certain governments right now, and particularly in this particular case, how the government can really restrict groups more so than they used to, just by arresting people.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the police bill did pass, so that the card at the end that says the police were taken to court, that was to do with the ban. They banned protesters from the whole of London, so that was deemed illegal, rightly. But the police bill was actually another thing that they were pushing through the government, and it did pass. And they've also, just in the last week, passed another one that's even worse, which, I mean, I can't believe I'm about to say this, that this is actually a thing now in the UK, but basically, if you've been to 2 or more protests in the last 5 years, you don't have to have any criminal offence, you don't have to have broken the law, nothing. You can now be banned from meeting certain people, from using the internet to talk about protest. You may have to report to a particular person at a particular place. You may have to wear an electronic tag. If you break any of these rules, you could end up in prison for a year. I mean, it's essentially, they've made peaceful protest illegal. They've got that ability now to just totally stop it. So I don't really recognize where this country is at the moment. It's really frightening. And I know, in America, there's similar things happening with politicians just trying to, it's all about protecting your position and power, rather than doing your job and looking after people, representing people properly. So it's really frightening. And the one thing that I think has given us some kind of hope is that this actually has been a point at which lots of groups have come together to protest it, protesting for the right to protest. And that's really great to see that collaboration and that energy and that spirit to fight back and to not just let the government take our rights away. And I guess the good thing about a group like Extinction Rebellion is that a lot of people in it have already made peace with the fact that they may be arrested for what they do. So they'll keep going. Doesn't really matter, I think, what the government throws at them. Even if we're heading into a police state, I know there are people that have this very strong spirit, and their heart's really in the right place, and they're going to keep going. So that gives me some hope. But it's really not good, and I wish more people were talking about it and aware of it.
A couple of things about that. You said that groups are coming together. I think one of the things that I would like to see is that groups from even just opposite points of view come together just in protecting people's right to speech. Because what I'm seeing a lot here is that if it's some group that's getting in trouble, but they're on the side that you don't like, people don't seem to care. like if they're losing their rights, or if they're going to jail, if they're losing their bank accounts. People are so divided right now, but it seems like your film makes a very strong point that it's just important for people to have that right to protest, that to state their views. And you stated so well in the film. It's very, very powerful.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
As a filmmaker, I was wondering, do you have any fear that you yourself as a filmmaker could be at risk because you're at these events? You know, if you were to make a film like this again today, could the mere fact that you're there at these protests, does that count that you're at protests?
Yeah.
Or that like you're, you know, prior to them going to an event, something that they're going to do, are you now liable because like you knew this ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, there already are filmmakers being arrested at protest sites. So yeah, literally last week, a filmmaker, I think he's called Rich Felgate, he was filming the Just Stop Oil campaign, and he was rounded up by the police and held, I think, potentially he was held overnight actually. So yeah, that's already happening. And I think if I started making another activist film now, I would be very much expecting that to happen. And I don't think he's the only person. I've seen other filmmakers get into trouble with the police. So yeah, it's something to be very aware of. While we were making the film, the only thing that we were worried about was if our footage would incriminate anyone, because, you know, if you do things like target an airport, there's a risk that they'll call it terrorism, even if it's totally non-violent, no harm's going to be caused to anyone. And really scarily with that is like even just being present in a meeting where that action was discussed, you could be implicated, even if you don't take part, you don't even agree with it. So I think that's something also for filmmakers to be aware of, is like you're collecting evidence potentially, and like you know, being aware that you're not sort of careless with your footage, because yeah, with terrorism stuff, they can also just bash down your door. They don't need a warrant or anything, and they can just raid and take whatever they want. So yeah, that was quite frightening to learn that at the time.
One of the things that I thought you did so well, and I know there's some people in the audience that want to ask some questions, is when you show the police coming in to break up the protest, the music is incredible. The editing is intense. Can you explain a little bit about the process of the filmmaking, the editing, in order to create that drama that, you know, the viewer can experience when watching the film?
Yeah, that was actually, there was a moment of tension between us and the editor. Had a lovely editor called Mike Nolle, who he was like amazing to work with, because he brought ideas, and he was someone that we could really like push against, but also he did ultimately respect that we'd really been on the inside. It was the film that we really knew. We knew the people really well, and you know, he ultimately didn't want to tread on our toes too much. But there was one bit around the music with the warehouse raid where the police bashed down that door.
Yeah.
And he won that battle. I wanted slightly more like tense music for it, like slightly more sinister music, because I'd been the one filming that day, and I had felt such a sense of unease the whole day. It was really unpleasant, because also the police had kind of not been very upfront about what they were doing. They just appeared, and it wasn't clear if they were going to start arresting on what was happening, and then they started arresting people who were just carrying like a tent pole, really random stuff. And then obviously it led to that bashing of the door and more arrests, and it was just, yeah. And I was like, but it was so uncomfortable, and you know, we need to, I don't want to have music that's too kind of upbeat and is like making light of it. And Mike was sort of very adamant that the music wasn't too leading for people, and we ultimately let people make up their own minds. You know, they can judge for themselves. And I think that, you know, music you have to be very careful with, because ideally you don't really notice the music, I think, and the moment you do start to notice it too much, then it's like can be a sign that it's a bit too heavy-handed, or it's, you know, it's like pushing you to feel a certain way. And we never, with this film, we weren't really trying to, you know, push people down any particular direction. We kind of wanted it to be an insight into what we saw. So yeah, I guess it was good that I pulled back and I let Mike put his track in with the funky guitar. Because, yeah,
well, I also like the end credits song, Public Image.
That's very cool. Yeah.
What was going into your decision to use that song?
That was also Mike, actually. I think Elena and I are a bit young for that song. So
Okay.
he was like, oh, it's got great, it's tied to the anti-apartheid movement, and like, you know, it's a really, I think this could work. And actually, yeah, that was that when we started sharing an early cut of the film with that song, lots of people reacted so positively to it that we were like, yeah, that's definitely staying. So yeah.
Well, what in the end do you hope that people take away from this movie as they see it now all over the world?
I think we would like people to feel empowered by, you know, collective action, to realize that they don't need to be sitting at home worrying, feeling isolated, that it's, you know, it's important to get out and meet people and do things together. We're more powerful when we do things together. And to just maybe like check themselves before they, you know, feel angry towards people like this. Because I think the media is often feeding that they want us to, you know, have those strong reactions, click on things, and, you know, things to go viral, and it's just really not helpful. And you know, I think, yeah, we just wanted to show the human side of things and hopefully connect people a little bit more to activists who get so sidelined and othered a lot. So yeah, I think those are the two main things: people power and connection.
Well, I think you did a great job at it. Thank you so much. Can I ask you just one more question? I've been struck, I don't really fully understand it, but I've been seeing these stories about Danish farmers protesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story, but that there's new, like for the longest time, environmentalists have had to battle against the government. And I don't know if there's going to be some kind of turn around of things around the world, but it seems like the government is saying that because of environmental reasons that the farmers have to change the way that they're farming. And then there were all these farmers protesting, and then they were saying that it was illegal for them to protest. Are you familiar with what I'm referring to?
I've heard of that in Holland before. I haven't seen it in Denmark.
Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think basically, I don't know the details of it, but I imagine that they're not working collaboratively enough with farmers. Because actually in the UK, I know that there are schemes that are environmentally friendly and trying to move, yeah, towards renewable energy and different land use, basically, that I think a lot of farmers are actually behind, because as in they're pro it, because the land that they currently have isn't very good for what they're trying to grow. There's a lot of farmers that are really struggling. So I think, yeah, it needs to be, clearly the way we use land is not very sensible, and we need to be shifting that as well. But I think, yeah, we don't go about it by just implementing policies in a top-down way. I think they need to be at the table, and they need to be brought in, and they need to be part of that transition. And, you know, I know that sometimes identity can come into it as well, especially if you're, say, a dairy farmer or something, and that's been in your family for generations. I can imagine that's a very difficult time for them. But also, yeah, it's very, very stressful to be a farmer right now. So I think probably a lot of them are much more receptive to change than we realize, and it's important. I mean, yeah, I'm not an expert in this area at all, obviously,
Yeah.
but my understanding is like, yeah, that we just they need to be a big part of the conversation, and not being just kind of eradicated, basically. So.
Well, thank you very much again for doing the Q&A and for making this incredible film. And I wish you continued success with the movie.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to talk to you guys.
Good night.
Night night. Bye.